What I found interesting about this Joker Folie à Deux experience is that it very much is similar to how I felt after the first one, which is I feel like this movie is talking about something that it has no proximity to. It's trying to address these big social issues, these really deep metaphorical and societal issues that Arthur Fleck is facing, but I don't feel like there's any sort of tangible connection between the filmmakers, the subject matter, and the end product that we see on the big screen. This is a very precarious situation to be in this movie because I want to applaud a big risk. I want to celebrate a big studio being able to greenlight a movie as bizarre as this. However, this movie didn't have a lot to say. I really didn't feel any kind of connection to it. I really didn't feel like there was an exact vision per se. I feel like there's highlights, there's an overview. The opportunity that you have with these stars and this IP and this story and this kind of ravenous audience that embrace you so much in the first film. What is this? Hi, my name is Emily, or La Movie Mija. I'm a part-time filmmaker, full-time movie lover, and this is my review of Joker Folie à Deux. Welcome back to my channel. I appreciate you taking the time to spend a little time with me. You can expect new movie reviews from me every single week, and sometimes I even take you to the movie theaters with me so you can see my reaction to revival screenings of movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey that I saw for the very first time in 70mm. Wild. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. All right, let's get into it. Struggling with his dual identity, failed comedian Arthur Fleck meets the love of his life, Harley Quinn, while incarcerated at Arkham State Hospital. Directed by Todd Phillips, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, Zazie Beetz, Catherine Keener, Harry Lawtey, Brendan Gleeson, and Steve Coogan. I find myself to be possibly a unique person to be reviewing this movie because I was not a particularly huge fan of the first, and I do love musicals. And I feel like the loudest reviewers of this movie right now are people who loved the first one and hate musicals. So I am not those things.
It may be crazy, but we're gonna do it. The Dooming Cavalier is now a musical. Hot dog! Hallelujah!
I love musicals, and if you are looking for a courtroom drama musical that is a fantastical adaptation from the stage to the screen, you should check out Chicago. Not this movie. This movie picks up right after the events of the first Joker, which came out in 2019 and earned Joaquin Phoenix his Academy Award. So now Arthur Fleck is facing trial for the crimes he committed in the first film. And the entire movie is that trial. And it's... And when I say that this movie was a chore to get through, I mean that the elements that I did admire about the first film are largely absent from this sequel. The first film, even though I didn't really connect with how they were presenting mental illness, how they were trying to make the connection between childhood trauma and the societal impact that he is facing and everything like that, it didn't really come all together in the end for me in a way that was, profound. However, I did admire the cinematography. I admired the colors. I admired the direction. And that performance by Joaquin Phoenix is just so encompassing, and it is something to celebrate, regardless if I liked the film's message or not. However, upon watching this film, I didn't feel like any of those things were as present. Because we are mostly in Arkham Asylum and the courtroom, which are very dark and dim, we don't get to see the same level of exploration with the colors. You do get a little bit of that in the musical numbers, but not to a satisfying extent. It's hard to say, but Joaquin Phoenix's performance in this as well feels a little subdued, but that's because I feel like we're just retreading old material. If the first film was all about his transformation from Arthur Fleck to Joker, he's essentially doing that again. Instead of building off of the momentum of the character development that we saw from the first film, this film kind of just retreads the same path, the same journey. We're not really getting anything new from Arthur. There has been a lot of disdain for this movie being a musical, and people are pointing to that being the reason that it's not doing well. However, as a musical theater lover, I went in knowing that this was going to be a musical because, duh, I'd seen a trailer. Like, I thought this was going to be our, like, dark and stormy, gloomy La La Land. This was going to be a little La La Land for the goth kids, right? However, the way that the music operates in this film is this movie is a jukebox musical, meaning we are using previous released music. So none of the songs, except for one, I believe, written by Lady Gaga, are entirely new. So the music doesn't really serve a narrative purpose in the same way that you would expect from other jukebox musicals like Mamma Mia. Is it just me, or did anyone else expect Die With a Smile to come up in this movie at some point? I don't know why I thought that Lady Gaga Bruno Mars song would go with this movie. I mean, Die With a Smile, that feels very Joker coded, like a Joker romance. Die With a Smile. I mean, it was right there. Honestly though, I did doze off once or twice watching this movie, so maybe this song was in there. Please let me know if it was. I'm so sorry to admit that. That never happens, and so unprofessional of me. What I hoped they were doing in this movie was maybe making, like, the musical numbers his opportunity to escape mentally and, you know, be somewhere else, or show us some character emotion. However, I really didn't see that connection in the narrative either. The songs just feel plopped throughout the story, throughout the narrative, and it feels like we're halting all action to see these really subdued musical numbers. They're kind of mumble singing for the most part, not even going full out, not a lot of dancing involved. You know, the things that make musical numbers exciting. And they are essentially just halting all of the momentum, and it really makes this film a chore to get through. And then you have Lady Gaga's Lee Quinzel, Harley Quinn. She was fine. I was really excited to see what they were going to do with this character because we've seen many iterations of Harley Quinn at this point, including my favorite, Margot Robbie in Birds of Prey. That movie, I'm sorry, it did not get its due, and anytime I get a chance to talk about it and sing its praises, I love that movie. The action in that movie, the way that they are actually paying respects to Harley Quinn and letting her be the character that we love, and it's just so much fun. If you never gave that movie a fair chance, I please implore you to go give that movie a fair shot because it freaking rocks. Unlike in this movie, Harley Quinn is kind of the romantic aggressor with Joker, and she is also like a fan of the Joker movement. So it is interesting to see them kind of flip the narrative script on how we traditionally look at Harley being pursued and manipulated by Joker. Seeing her in a different kind of role in this movie was a little surprising, but it ultimately didn't feel entirely necessary for this character to be Harley Quinn. She really could have been any woman. And then there's the story that justifies the entire existence of this film, being that Todd Phillips resented the fan base for the first film. So he set out to make a movie that nobody was going to like, that especially that fan base from the first film that he resents wasn't going to like. A musical where nothing happens. There's no consequences. There are no stakes. And to that end, I think this movie is successful because it alienates a lot of people. This is a film that is very high art in its presentation. Definitely something that had a vision, just not one that I think landed. I am not one to dissuade people from ever going to seek out a film in theaters if they are curious. I think going to the movies is a really important part of showing our collective interest in the kinds of stories that get told. And even though this is a big swing and I have some level of admiration for that, I do struggle to recommend people to go see this movie because it wasn't an enjoyable watch for me. But again, if you are curious, if you are a fan of the first film, if you are even, open-minded enough to see how this movie exists in the larger context of the Joker fandom, I would then give you a green light to go see this movie. Okay, that was dangerously close to an endorsement of this movie, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Even though this movie didn't particularly land for me, it might have an audience elsewhere, and I'm curious to know how this is going to be looked back on in 10 to 15 years. All right, let's get into some spoiler territory for this movie with a 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, this was one of the most challenging watches of the year for me. I was already hesitant just going in because I'd never fully embraced the first film or regarded it as highly as other people did. Unlike some, one of my main motivations to see this movie was the prospect that it was going to be a musical, and because it had Lady Gaga. Rewatched the first film right before seeing this one, and to me it makes thematic and narrative sense that this would naturally evolve into being a musical. There was such a strong presence of music in the first film, and the way that Joaquin Phoenix would contort his body and like find moments where he connects with himself and feels one with his body again was through movement. So to naturally progress into this being a musical where songs and movement become a critical part of the way that Arthur Fleck connects with himself and with his audience made sense to me. And the music is kind of like a metaphor for like the darkness within him, or like the harmony that comes together when he actually finds his center. But like I mentioned in the spoiler-free portion of this video, the way that they use the jukebox musical just didn't work for me. Like, Mamma Mia is one of the pinnacle jukebox musicals for me, and that movie uses all of ABBA's music to tell the story about a bride who invites 3 men to her wedding, men she's never met, but she believes that any one of them could be her father because she wants one of them to walk her down the aisle, and she doesn't tell her mom about it. That plot is wild. That is a good jukebox musical. You should go watch Mamma Mia. But this movie, I mean, the songs felt like a chore, and it hurts my heart. Look how they massacred my boy.
Look how they massacred my boy.
It hurts my heart to say that because music is such a powerful tool for connection, for storytelling, and to know that they kind of just like threw away their shot and didn't take full advantage of how the music could connect to the story was just like, this movie gives musicals a bad rep. If you are not a fan of musicals and you go watch this movie, I have to say that you cannot add this to your list of reasons of why you don't like musicals. This is gray zone, okay? Speaking of Gaga, Lady Gaga, I do not particularly care for the character of Lee Quinzel in this movie. And yes, I get that's the point. Like, Harley Quinn is actually the villain in this iteration, and she's a villain like twice over. She is a well-off woman who is cosplaying as a, you know, woman who is being committed to Arkham when really she checked herself in there so that she could connect with Joker. That's a spicy tale. That's an interesting presentation of a character to show us within the context of fame and false idols and the Joker. That I could get behind. However, it just doesn't land fully. I feel like we're introduced to that concept and it makes sense the more you're removed from it, but the experience of watching that movie doesn't feel like I'm on a journey. The movie is happening at me and I have to do with it what I can to make sense of what just happened. So Harley is a well-off woman who is benefiting from the same system that is neglecting people like Arthur Fleck. So she is a villain in the systemic sense, and she is a villain on the one-to-one sense because she is manipulating Arthur and wanting him to step into the fantasy that he becomes Joker so that she can be the person who falls in love with Joker. And Folie adieu.
Adieu, adieu, to you and you and you.
Is a term that means a delusion that is shared between two people. So it seems like Arthur and Harley Quinn are having this shared delusion that he is Joker, and their entire romance only works if he lives up to that delusion. So let's talk about that ending. I do say it's successful in reinforcing the things that I thought were pretty clear in the first one. That Joker is not necessarily a person. It is a movement. It is the chaos that is brought about by the actions of one person who personally has no motivations to be a leader. He just wants to be seen. He just wants to be recognized. And this movie is him trying to understand if he would be recognized were it not for the facade of Joker. Is anybody actually looking at Arthur Fleck? But by the time Arthur Fleck is trying to be himself and, possibly make amends for the crimes he committed in the first film, it's too late. And we don't even get the satisfaction of that. And I think that's okay. I think on a grander scale, the idea that we don't give criminals airtime to allow people to further feed their delusions about their parasocial relationships with them, I think is a good thing. So in the movie, the way that operates is there's a giant explosion that interrupts what would have been his grand speech. So we don't get that moment of catharsis with Arthur in the same way. It's cut off by the people who are wanting him to just be Joker. They do not want Arthur Fleck to live. They only want the idea of Joker to persist. And that is very blatant in that explosion cutting off his big cathartic moment. And then we end up back in the prison where he has a visitor, we don't know who, as he's walking away. He is called upon by this other guy who we got a lot of close-ups with earlier on. It seems like he's also obsessed with the Joker movement. And he tells him a joke and proceeds to end his life. And as Arthur Fleck is on the floor dying, the man behind him, out of focus because his individuality doesn't matter, he is being sucked up by the movement, is laughing in that same Joker laugh. That was also an interesting point, is that Arthur Fleck's laugh, his laughing condition, was largely absent from this movie. I'm not sure why, but the laugh was then adopted by the man who killed him. And what I find a little funny about that and the first Joker is Todd Phillips had to tell this story twice for people to kind of understand it. And I still don't know if people understand it. And there's no one way to interpret art, but my understanding has always been that Joker is not a person. Joker is a movement. Joker is not the Joker. That article is important because the Joker indicates that there is one, and that he is the one. He is the person with agency who is able to manipulate others and benefit from the chaos that he enacts. But Joker in this universe is not a criminal mastermind. He is not a villain with any sincere intentions of taking over Gotham or wanting to cause chaos. He is only looking out for himself, and he's kind of like an everyman failing upward into supervillain status. But Arthur Fleck ain't. Yes, he is a victim of childhood trauma. Yes, he's a victim of abuse. Yes, he is a victim of the criminal justice system. Yes, he is a victim of Gotham not being able to have access to medications that are greatly going to improve his quality of life. However, he also is not He is just somebody who is acting on his own accord without the consideration of others, without the consideration for how those actions would impact a society. But the society is creating the monster. The society in Gotham is creating the idea of Joker, and having him die such a uneventful death, such a sad and lonely, quiet death, is very much in tune with the tone of the entire Joker series. At the end of the day, I understand that telling a story about someone within the prison system, someone who is experiencing incredible abuse, someone who feels forgotten within society, it shouldn't be a movie that is enjoyable per se, but to some extent, there has to be a movie that has a message, that has a story that feels like something we can connect to. And I don't feel like this movie made an earnest effort for that. And I think that's the point. I think that's what Todd Phillips wanted. To that end, I would say, bravo. Bravo. That is such a bold take. That is such a bold move to do, to alienate people in such a way to make your point. I think my issue with that is I don't feel the same level of sincerity about the issues and the people who are close to issues like what Arthur Fleck is experiencing. I don't feel like there's a sincerity to portray accurate or meaningful stories about those people. But at least I get to take away from this that the Joker, or Joker is not someone. It is a thing, and it is important to investigate the people that we put up on these pedestals, investigate these false idols, do our due diligence as a society to make sure we are taking care of one another. Wow. Okay. I honestly didn't think I was going to have much to say about this movie. I know I just sang Francis Ford Coppola's praises with his big risks with Megalopolis in my last video, but I am a little irked that he's out here supporting Todd Phillips and his big risks, and no one of the same stature or level came out to show an outpouring of support for people like Nia DaCosta when the Marvels was facing a lot of backlash. Francis, I expected more from you. Or maybe you were doing exactly what I thought you would do. But let me know what you thought about Joker Folie à Deux. What camp do you fit in? Are you someone who liked the first one, hated the second, liked the first one, liked the second, hated the first one, liked the second, or hated the first and hated the second? Okay, that is all for now. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe and check out the other videos on my channel, and let me know what you thought about Joker Folie à Deux. All right, see you next time. Bye.